Today, as Kenya buries one of its own, the full weight of our collective failure settles upon the red earth of Kakwonyo Village. Albert Ojwang, the 30-year-old teacher and blogger whose only crime was speaking truth to power, is being laid to rest at his father's home in Homa Bay County. The cost of his funeral, 4.5 million shillings, pales in comparison to the price Kenya has paid for allowing his killers to walk free. But even as we mourn Albert, another family grieves. Boniface Kariuki, the mask vendor shot point blank in the head by police constable Klinzy, died on Monday, June 30th, at 3:15 p.m. His post-mortem report has now revealed the devastating truth: severe brain damage caused by a bullet that entered just above his ear and destroyed any hope of survival. The autopsy confirms what we witnessed in that horrific video: a calculated execution disguised as crowd control. Today's burial is not just a funeral, it is a reckoning. As mourners gather in Kakwonyo Village, they carry with them the weight of a system that has failed not just Albert, but Boniface, Joshua, and Deratu, and countless others whose names we may never know. Comedian Eric Amandi has called upon teachers across Kenya to join in a symbolic celebration of Albert's life, recognizing that he died not just as a blogger, but as an educator who believed in the power of truth. The circumstances of Albert's death continue to haunt Kenya's conscience. Arrested on a Friday at his home in Western Kenya for allegedly defaming a senior police official on social media, he was transported nearly 200 miles to Nairobi Central Police Station. By Sunday, he was dead, his body bearing the unmistakable marks of a brutal beating. The independent autopsy revealed head injuries, neck compression, and extensive soft tissue damage, evidence that demolished police claims of suicide and exposed the extrajudicial execution that it was. The fury that Albert's death unleashed has not subsided. Residents of his home area stormed Magar Police Station, where he was initially detained, and set it ablaze in protest of what they termed a state-sanctioned execution. The message was clear: the people of Kenya will no longer accept police brutality in silence. Meanwhile, the post-mortem report on Boniface Kariuki reads like a medical testimony to state violence. The bullet, according to his father Jonah Kariuki Nyambura, went through his head just above the ear, causing catastrophic brain damage that no medical intervention could reverse. For 8 days, Boniface clung to life in the intensive care unit at Kenyatta National Hospital, his existence suspended between beeping machines and whispered prayers. The medical bills exceeded 1 million shillings, crushing burden for a family already devastated by the loss of their breadwinner. The Associated Press photographer who captured the shooting described it as one of the most shocking displays of police brutality he had ever witnessed. The images show Boniface being shot at point-blank range, collapsing instantly as the officers turned and walked away. There was no struggle, no resistance, no threateningly a man trying to make a living and officers who decided his life was worthless. Both police constable Klinzy Barasa and his colleague Duncan Kiprono from Kileleshwa Police Station have been arrested and are currently in custody. The case has been reclassified as murder, a small step toward justice in a system that has too often protected those who kill in uniform. Yet as these officers face charges, the broader culture of impunity that enabled their violence remains largely intact. The parallel tragedies of Albert and Boniface exposed the fundamental contradiction at the heart of Kenya's governance. Albert died for exercising his constitutional right to free speech, killed by the very system that claims to protect democratic values. Boniface died for exercising his constitutional right to earn a living, executed by officers who saw his entrepreneurial spirit as a threat worthy of death. As Albert's body is lowered into the ground today, his family bears not just the burden of grief, but the crushing weight of funeral expenses. The 4.5 million shillings required for his burial represents more than many Kenyan families earn in years. It is a cruel irony that the state that killed him now leaves his family to struggle with the cost of burying him. The symbolism of today's burial extends far beyond one man's death. Albert taught history and Christian religious education at Kituma Secondary School in Voi Taita Taveta County. He was an educator who believed in the power of knowledge to transform society. His death represents not just the loss of a life, but the silencing of a voice that dared to challenge authority through the written word. Boniface's death carries its own tragic symbolism. He was selling masks during protests about police man who understood the market and brought products people needed to protect themselves from tear gas. His entrepreneurial instinct, his understanding of supply and demand, his willingness to work in dangerous conditions to feed his family. These are the qualities that should be celebrated in any society. Instead, they earned him a bullet to the head. The post-mortem findings on Boniface provide medical confirmation of what the video evidence already showed. This was not an accidental shooting or a case of police defending themselves. The bullet trajectory, the point of entry, the devastating brain damage all point to a deliberate execution, carried out at close range by an officer who had no justification for using deadly force. As Kenya mourns these losses, the question that haunts us is not just who will be held accountable, but what kind of society we choose to become. Albert's burial today should serve as a reminder that every life lost to police violence represents a family destroyed, a community traumatized, and a nation diminished. The fact that 2 officers are now in custody for Boniface's murder represents progress, but justice delayed is justice denied. The culture that produced these killings, the training that teaches officers to see citizens as enemies, the impunity that protects those who abuse power, the system that rewards violence and punishes accountability remains largely unchanged. Eric Amandi's call for teachers to honor Albert today recognizes an important truth. Albert died not just as a blogger, but as an educator. He was killed for teaching uncomfortable truths about power and authority, for refusing to accept that criticism of officials should be met with violence rather than dialogue. His death represents an attack on the very foundations of education and free thought. As the red earth of Kakwonyo Village covers Albert's coffin, as his family begins the long process of grieving without justice, as Boniface's family prepares their own funeral while fighting for accountability, Kenya faces a choice. We can continue down this path of violence and impunity, where speaking truth is punishable by death and selling masks is a capital offense. Or we can choose to become the nation that Albert and Boniface believed we could be, a place where teachers can educate without fear, where entrepreneurs can work without being executed, where citizens can demand accountability without being killed. The autopsy reports on both men tell the same story. Lives cut short by a system that has forgotten its purpose. Albert's head injuries and neck compression, Boniface's severe brain damage. These are not just medical findings, but indictments of a society that has lost its way. Today, as we bury Albert Ojwang, we must not just mourn his death, but commit to preventing others like it. As we read the post-mortem report on Boniface Kariuki, we must not just seek justice for his family, but demand reforms that will protect future generations from the violence that killed him. The cost of Albert's funeral, 4.5 million shillings, is a price his family should never have had to pay. The cost of Boniface's medical treatment, over 1 million shillings, is a burden his family should never have had to bear. But the cost of our continued silence, the price of accepting this violence as normal, is one that Kenya can no longer afford. As the sun sets over Kakwonyo Village today, as Albert's family and friends say their final goodbyes, we must remember that his death was not inevitable. It was a choice made by those who decided that silence in dissent was more important than protecting life. Similarly, Boniface's death was not an accident. It was a decision made by officers who valued their authority more than his existence. The post-mortem reports on both men provide medical evidence of what we already knew. Kenya's security forces have declared war on its own people. The question now is whether we will accept this war as permanent, or whether we will finally demand the peace that Albert and Boniface died believing was possible. Their deaths must not be in vain. Their families' grief must not be ignored. Their killers must not walk free. And their dreams of a Kenya where truth could be spoken without fear, where honest work could be done without violence, must not be allowed to die with them. Today, we bury Albert Ojwang. This week, we mourn Boniface. Tomorrow, we must choose what kind of Kenya we want to wake up in. The choice is ours, but the time for making it is running out.